Hey folks, welcome to Airtime Paintball, where people come to get all the information they need to get good deals on paintball stuff. Today, it's the Luxe TM40. Let's have a look at it. So, the TM40. Before we get into the actual marker, in case you don't know, there's a lot of significance to the name of this marker, TM40. It is sort of a tribute to Tim Montressor, and the 40 was his traditional number with various teams he played with. Tim was one of the most beloved figures really ever in paintball. I was privileged to meet him several times. I didn't know him well, but I met him a few times. Really great guy. I don't think anyone in the history of the sport worked as tirelessly for the advancement of paintball in general, especially in the area of keeping tournament paintball fun, than Tim did. And he was also a ferocious player. Played for Tampa Bay Damage, some other teams. Well, he worked at DLX / Shocker Paintball, and he passed a while back and from illness, and DLX decided to make their updated to the X, the TM40, and that's why it's called that. Great guy, great reason to name a marker for sure. So let's have a look at it. The TM40 is a mild update to the Luxe X, which is the DLX's high-end marker. Has been out for quite some time. The biggest difference between this and the previous X is that they've reconfigured things so that it can easily accept a mechanical frame. But there's a couple other changes too. Let's have a look at it. So the first thing you see when you see a Luxe marker is this case. I'm not a huge fan of how thick it is, but the cases are really good. Every time I do a review, it's like Planet Eclipse is like the whipping boy for me when it comes to cases. The worst, Planet Eclipse markers, I'm a huge fan. I own several. Can't say enough good about them. The cases are terrible. They have those thin skin aluminum cases that just immediately get beat up no matter how hard you try to take care of them. And they've been using them forever, and they're just terrible. I wish they would give up on those. These Luxe cases are awesome. You can see they have the vinyl embossed. The Shocker paintball cases are similar. It has some good rigidity to it to protect it in your bag, but soft enough to not beat other things up that are in your bag, and durable. These are solid cases. Let's have a look at what's in there. So, did I do this the right way? Yeah. So we have, they come with a little work mat, and on the back there's storage. You have the USB charger, Allen keys, barrel cover, the USB cable, and you can use this as a tech mat. If you empty everything out of there and lay this flat, like one of the place we play in Nashville a lot, they have picnic tables, and picnic table's not great, right, for servicing a marker because little parts fall through and such. So you have a little kind of a tech mat space here if you want to use it. That's pretty cool. You've got a quick start guide. About a third of this is dedicated to removing the frame, but it's got good information in there on setting up the marker, adjusting velocity, etc. Well done, full color, easy to read, solid there. And then of course we have lube, parts kit, pretty standard for what every marker comes with. And these come with a Freak XL barrel and one insert, and that of course is going to lead us directly to one of the things that I'm not a big fan of this marker, and not a huge deal. By the way, it's a little stiff to get together, but that's not a problem. It's just that it's new. By the way, speaking of this being new, our good Airtime Paintball buddy Bryce in Hawaii bought this marker brand new and never even used it. Shipped it directly here so that we could have a review of it. Shout out to Bryce. You are awesome. And this barrel's only put together a couple of times. That's why it's stiff. That O-ring, you put a little oil on it or use it a few times, it loosens up. Fine. Freak XL barrels, great, perfectly good barrel. That comes with a 1/6/8/7 insert, and that's the part that kind of bugs me. These things are $1,500. These inserts retail for I think $15 each. I'm sure it costs them somewhere in the neighborhood of $4 or $5 or $6 maybe at most to land these. Like they're made overseas and imported here, and for $1,500 marker that they can't include just even one more, right? One more insert, really, like it's annoying to me that they're going to try to milk you for more money by making you buy another insert if you want to have even one more change in, you know, your bore matching. Yeah, it should come with 3, in my opinion, would be a nice number considering the cost of them 2 DLX for this price point. But nonetheless, comes with 1. You can buy whole kits for like $120 for a whole range. Whole kits really aren't needed. You can buy 2 more. It comes with a 687. If I were to own one of these and I wanted to try to save money on the inserts, I might buy a 684 and a 679, something like that, given how small paint is nowadays. But here we have the barrel, and then we're going to flip this over. You get a little guide here of how to program the marker, which is cool. That's also covered in the quick start guide. Most importantly, the marker. And if you're familiar with DLX markers, it is very similar looking, and I've said this a bunch of times before, that consistently, ever since Luxe markers came out, put this to the side here, in my opinion, they're the coolest looking markers you can buy. And they just look amazing. It looks like a Star Trek phaser. Super cool looking. One of my favorite things about these is how they look. You might notice not a lot of change aesthetically from the X, and that's because it's not very different from the X. You get a few differences, but if you're not familiar with the model, we're going to kind of go through the whole thing anyway. Starting from the back here, we have the bolt, and there actually is a difference with the bolt. They've changed subtly the shot chamber volume slightly bigger to give it a little bit lower operating pressure, and according to DLX, a little bit easier on paint, which is a good thing because paint handling is not a strong suit of the X for sure. And if this one is easier on paint, that would be good. This being a brand new marker that doesn't belong to me, I have not put cases and cases of paint through this. I put a few hoppers through it, and I did not break a ball. The paint I was using wasn't particularly brittle, so kind of the jury's out on the paint handling. I have seen people say on Facebook that replacing the bolt, which is a hollow center bolt, with the Adrenaline Luxe bolt, which is, I believe, a flat face soft tip bolt, it makes the paint handling better. I haven't tried that. It's something to look into if you're going to get one of these. But apart from that, this is essentially still the X core, which is, of course, as we've mentioned many times here, a direct, blatant copy of the Planet Eclipse Gamma core. And as such, it works great, which it should, because the Gamma core is an excellent design, and they did a pretty good job copying it. So this also works well. You can see it was very easy for me to pull that out. We have this cool latch mechanism where you pull up on this. A little bit stiff to get out at first, but when you do it a few times, it loosens up. Easy to get the bolt out, easy maintenance. Not super maintenance intensive. That's a nice thing about this design. Just like in the Planet Eclipse that they used, it's not a big lube eater. You can service these once a month if you play regularly, even less than that really, and they'll still work great. Nice shot feel and pretty efficient. So solid core there. We have, of course, clamping feed neck. You can see here, standard fare with a nice size thumb wheel. Pretty standard that you're going to see on any high-end gun. It makes it easy to adjust to tension to whatever hopper you've got. One note about that, the Control and Spire 4, I tried both in here, were too small for this feed neck. If you go back to the Control, Spire 4, and Spire 3, I tried all of those. No matter how tight I made this, they still spun around. If you go back to the Spire 3, those hoppers have been around for years, so how they're still making a feed neck that won't clamp down on them well is kind of a mystery, but that was my experience. My personal favorite hopper to use is the old Spire 260 with the IR guts, and my 260 shells must be a little bit fatter than that because they tighten on here just fine. I had no problems with that. We also have removable eye covers. It's a pretty cool design. I have kind of big fingers, so I'm going to try to do this so you can see. This small plastic part press. Let's see if I can see in the camera here. This little black latch, I would pull this up, and then, but you also have to push down on the front, so I can't really do it in front of the camera without possibly dropping the thing. So I'm going to try to do it here. You press forward on the latch, and then down on the front of the cover, and the cover pops out. Pretty cool design. It's a little fiddly with that little tiny latch, but not a big deal. Toolless, you know, obviously it's easy to get off. I just did it. One thing I like about the Luxe guns is they use this little hinged, I'm going to hold this up to the camera. This little orange piece is a hinged plastic detent, and I really like that design. They last forever. The Planet Eclipse is a simple design that many other companies use. It's sort of a little rubber oval with a piece sticking out, like a little finger sticking out, and that's the detent. And those are susceptible to wear, and if you store the marker and the bolt happens to be forward, it can give them premature wear. These don't seem to have any of these problems because it's a hard plastic piece that's spring-loaded. I like that design. If you ever have to take this apart, or you break one of these, or somehow or whatever, need to like replace this, the spring behind it is tiny. And you better make sure you have a nice, something like this, like a nice, clear, soft work surface if you want to try to work on one of these. Because if you drop that spring anywhere but on a table like this, you're never finding it. It's minuscule. It's like barely visible to the naked eye. So a word of caution there. Design-wise, though, I have no problem with these. Detents are good. The eyes are kind of sort of an antiquated design in that there's really nothing protecting this from the breach. When you get paint in the breach from a broken ball, it just gets on the inside of the eye and can stop working. The dye has obviated that issue with the eye pipe, which some people like, some people don't, but it does keep paint off the eyes. Planet Eclipse has the light pipe system, which is keeps the eyes completely out of the breach. MacDev Prime XTS has a pressed-in clear plastic window that the eye looks through, that the bolt O-ring squeegees off like in an eye pipe. It keeps the eyes protected. But this still, these have the eye exposed, which is not a huge deal if it doesn't break too much paint, but kind of a point in the negative compared to other contemporary high ends. One thing that is nice about these, the grips are removable. Now don't confuse that with the high point being the grips. We're going to get to that in a minute. But the grips just pop off, and we have this rechargeable battery here, and we have a USB plug to charge, and the rechargeable battery right here. You can get extras and swap. And oh, I just dropped a little tiny O-ring. It's a seal out of the grip, actually. Let's see if I can see where that goes. That was my fault. I had this out earlier. I can't. You know what? I'm going to have to look and see where this goes. It's a little tiny seal for, oh, here it is, to keeps water out. I can't, you're not going to be able to see this in the camera. It goes around this little piece on the grip, and that helps keep water. I don't think I can get that to where you can see it. Maybe I can. That little tiny circle there. It's part of this outer seal also, where all that keeps water out of the gut. So that's pretty cool. I like that you can just peel the grips off. That's a design. I've talked a lot about how much I love the way die grips feel, but I hate the way they come off. These are nice because they just snap off. That's a weird thing about this, though, is you'd think that having a toolless grip would be a great reason to not have exposed screws, like it's an aesthetic thing. But with this, you still have the screws, but but you can peel them off without tools. By the way, there's a little tab here I missed. I'm going to put that back in there. There it goes. That's the right way to have them on. So easy to get inside the grip. That's cool. A big negative about these, and I mentioned the same thing with the amp shocker, the actual grip itself, as far as being a grip, is absolutely terrible. I don't know. I don't know who thinks that this is a good idea to have like a hard metal foregrip that tapers that you can bear. Like I was sweaty when I first shot this thing, and I was afraid I was going to drop it. Like I had to always hold it with two hands because this foregrip is so not like grippy. Like I always use that word. This is the opposite of grippy. It's hard plastic. This edge is sharp. The shape of it is tapered. It's like designed to slip out of your hand. Like it looks great, But as far as usefulness, the worst design ever in a foregrip, in my opinion. I do like the angle and the spacing. It feels good to hold this way, but to actually grip it, terrible. I know a few guys with X's and other markers, and they all either wear gloves or wrap this thing in tape to have a chance to hold on. The rear grip isn't quite as bad as the amp. However, this part here, it's hard to sort of describe. This is rubber, and it's kind of a hard-ish rubber, but it's okay. The rubber is okay, right? The problem is right here and right here, you can hear that, is hard plastic. And those places, for example, you can see when I grab this, here's the hard plastic. When I reach in here and grab this, the primary portion of where I'm grabbing is hard plastic. Like right where I'm most engaged on that grip is made out of hard plastic. Then, I'll do it this way so you can see. Oh, it doesn't work that way. We do it like this. When I reach my hands around, of course, my trigger finger isn't gripping, right? It's the bottom fingers that grip. Well, look where my bottom fingers are going. I just reach in here and grab it right on that hard plastic part again, directly on top of it. You can see where my fingers are going. And I'm not contriving to do that, I promise you. I reach in here, put my hand way far away, just reach in, wrap my fingers around, and my fingers are directly on top of that hard plastic. So this part's hard plastic, that part's hard plastic. Everywhere where I'm engaged to hold this thing is hard plastic. Why anyone would think that's a good idea is beyond me. But as soon as you get sweaty at all, this thing is like you almost can't hold on to it. I've said the same thing about the amp. Still true. Terrible grips. I understand there's a replacement for this front piece that has little rubber ribs in the front that aid in holding onto that. I haven't tried one of those, but if that's true and you can get one and otherwise you like these, you should get one for sure if you want to be able to hold on to the thing. Big negative in my opinion, and makes the ergonomics of this terrible. Like worst of really anything. Never mind high ends, but just not good. Another thing that people talk about ergonomically is the trigger. The trigger feel of this is nice. I like the trigger feel. I also like this shape. I know a lot of people like douche triggers. I actually like the shape of this just fine. I have no problem with that. It's a magnetic return, which is also fine. One thing that's lacking on these, in my opinion, is for the price, high-end price, unlike the M3 Plus or the older S or the CS2 or CS2 Pro, the rake of the trigger is not independently adjustable from the other adjustment parameters. In other words, pre-travel and post-travel. I find that to be like super important, a great feature to get just the right trigger feel that I want. For example, I adjusted this a bit to be just in the neighborhood that I like as far as how long it takes to engage and how the return feels and whatnot, and how much pre-travel it's got. But when I did that, I ended up with a trigger way back here when I really prefer it raked out quite a bit more. But I can't do both. I can either rake it out or get it to feel like I want. And with the M3 and the CS2 or CS2 Pro, I can do them independently. I can get the feel that I want. Once I'm done with that, I can then just move the trigger to the angle that I like and retain the feel. Now, this is a minor point. It doesn't bother me to play like this, and when I'm shooting it, I don't really notice it. I bring it up because in a high-end marker, I think lacking that feature is an oversight and kind of a negative ding against the marker. Weight-wise, it's pretty light. I didn't have a CS2 here to weigh. My gut feeling is that it's a little bit lighter than a CS2. It has very nice balance. It has a very sleek ASA, and the angle where the way the bottle comes out is going to be slightly tilted down like most markers. And when you put that together with the weight of this and the dimensions, which I mentioned, I like to hold the marker ergonomically in that regard. I like it fine. And with a tank on it, it's comfortable. And when we shoot it, you'll be able to see how that looks and how it's held and such. I have no problems with that. Screen is bright. It is smaller than all of the other high-end competition, with probably, I guess, with the exception of the MacDev Prime XTS. But that screen is easier to read. It's horizontal. Well, it's on this side, but it's horizontal and color on this screen. I would say the Planet Eclipse screen is larger, but I've talked about how on the CS2 Not a fan of that old matrixy, it's not really dot matrix, but it's an LCD screen. Very antiquated, but it is larger than this. So I think that this and the CS2 are sort of neck and neck screen-wise. This is a better screen. It presents the information better, and it's more modern, but it's smaller. The no competition, and I'm not picking on this in particular. There is no other marker that even compares at all to the M3 screen, which is that big screen on the side of the grip. That's, I mean, it's like 4 times the size of any other screen. Huge amount of information on that. Clearly the class leader in screen. But this screen does work. It's bright enough to see outside if it's not direct sunlight. So kudos there. And we can't forget this.
Powering on. Welcome to the Luxe Experience.
Welcome to the Luxe
Battery
Experience.
Level 100%. Firing mode NXL.
Oh, it's a beautiful thing, isn't it? No. Ridiculous feature that no one cares about. The voice. I just had to show you the voice. Hey, if you want your marker to talk to you, TM40 talks to you like the Luxe X did. Another thing it does is that when you run out of paint, you know, usually I notice I'm pulling the trigger and yet no paint is coming out, but this will beep and tell you, hey, by the way, you're not shooting any paint. So it has that going for it. So yeah, the whole sound thing with this, sort of answering a question nobody's asking, but no big deal. Some people like it. The build quality of this marker is very good, and I'm going to show you one aspect of it that I do really like. I'm going to pop this bolt out again. It's already getting easier. I've done it a few times now. Completely toolless to remove the frame. This is the big feature. Well, let me back up. The X does this also, but they've redesigned this so that you can swap on a mech frame really easily, and it all kind of goes part and parcel together with the way it removes, but totally toolless. And when I talk, the reason I bring that up with build quality is that the way that it comes off, we flip this latch up here, and then in here, you can see a latch right there. There's a little black latch in there. Now I'm going to be careful holding this because, in fact, let me take the barrel off. I don't want to drop Bryce's marker. We're going to just slide that back. It's no problem at all. And then it just comes apart. No screws at all, just 2 latches. And I bring that up about build quality because it is not easy to make something like this where the tolerances are good enough that you just slide it together like that. And then slide this latch and latch this with no screws, and it's completely tight and fits. You'd never know that you didn't screw it down with threaded fasteners. And that is a triumph of quality of manufacture, in my opinion. So that gets kudos for sure. That's not easy to do. It's very easy, in fact, to hide a little bit of loose tolerance with threaded fasteners, right? Like you put it on, it might be wobbly, like, oh, close enough, because when you screw the screws down, it snugs everything up and now it feels tight. Well, this has no such luxury. All you're doing is latching it. And you have to rely on the tolerances and the machining and the design to make it tight, and it's completely tight fitting. I think that's super cool and should be aspirational for other manufacturers. The solenoid, you can see this purple latch here, and I'm not going to take this off. Again, not mine, and I don't have a mech frame to put on it, so there's no reason to. But if I flip this purple latch down, it releases the tension, and the solenoid just comes off of here, just slides out. And what will happen is when you have a mech frame, you'll slide in the mechanical valve, put the purple thing back up, put the frame on, and you're done. Now you have a mech gun. And that is also pretty neat. How important is that? I'm not really sure. Are we really rapid changing our mech electro capability back and forth? Like, you know, even the ones where you have to use a couple screws to get the Noid out. You know, I mean, how long does that take? Like a minute, right? But it is cool. It's neat that you can just swap it off for sure. But for me, the most impressive thing is still the most impressive part of the X, same thing, is that you just slip this together, slide this latch forward, and put this latch down. And you see how easy that was. There was no grinding, a hard snap or anything. You just flip the levers, and you immediately have a complete unit. It feels like I've screwed it down with 4 screws. I mean, it's completely tight, very well fitting. That's the most impressive part of that for me. But that whole Noid replacement deal is a big thing for the TM40 in particular, because of the mech frame conversion. And I believe they're just getting to where they're starting to ship mech frames now. I'm not certain. The Adrenaline X frames do not fit this. So you can't buy an Adrenaline mech frame and stick it on here. I think Craig at DLX mentioned that you might be able to modify it and make it work, but it's not intended to work. You need the actual TM40 mech frame, which if they're not out now, they're on the way. Maybe by the time you see this, you'll be able to buy a mech frame for it. So yeah, that is an overview for you of the entire marker. I did shoot hoppers through it. It shot great. I made a shooting video, so instead of going on here about that, why don't we take a look at the shooting video, and we will come back in a minute. TM40. Okay, so shooting the Luxe TM40. So before I start, oh, it's not turned on. I'm going to be a smart aleck and shoot one after I said before I start. Here, listen to this.
Powering on. Welcome to the Luxe Experience.
Welcome to Luxe
Battery
Experience.
level 100.
All right. Yeah, that's enough. Stop talking. So yeah, TM40. It talks to you, right? Okay. So before I go into what it's like to shoot this, keep in mind that when we're doing these, the shooting portion of my videos, almost everything that we talk about is subjective, right? Because objectively, what do we have? You have a paintball marker, your stuff that you need to make it work, a hopper and a tank fit on it. You turn it on, you pull the trigger, and a ball comes out and goes where you aim it reliably. That's like all of what a paintball gun is doing. And everything else is sort of like preference and do you like the way it feels in your hands and all that. So I just want to get that out of the way. The marker definitely shoots paintballs. They go where you want reliably. It's you know, I haven't had a problem breaking paint, anything like that. And here's why I bring that up, or I say all that stuff, I should say. There is really nothing good for me, subjectively for me, about holding or shooting this marker. I mentioned that I've already mentioned I don't like the grip, so I'm not going to rehash all of that. You can see though, when I'm sitting here holding with weight, I mean, I'm not exaggerating. When I sit here and hold like this, these edges are like hurting my fingers a little. I mean, I'm not going to cry. I'm okay. I don't need a hug or anything, but it's not great, right? It's just not comfortable. Way too small. The taper's bad. I already talked about all that. But apart from that, the dimensions of all of this just don't work very well for me. When I just naturally grab this, and hopefully I'm square to the camera, when I just like reach in here and grab, you can see where my index finger is at the top, right? Well, the pivot for the trigger is way up here. So when I just naturally reach in here and grab, my top finger can't pull the trigger. I'm like pulling on it right now, and if I wiggle it, I can, but I'm like pulling straight back against the pivot. You want to be lower a little bit so you can easily activate the trigger. So I have to consciously hold my hand so that where my bottom finger is rubbing that bottom grip so that I can ramp. And even when I do that, I'm constantly missing. Again, subjective. Plenty of people shoot these and X's and other Luxes and don't have that issue, but for me, it's an issue. Not a fan. I also wish I could adjust the rake independently of the post and pre-travel to get this trigger kicked out a lot more. Not a huge fan of that angle. But apart from those things, actual shooting of paintballs, I like it fine. I really like the shot, which is no surprise because it is, oh yeah, I meant to mention about the trigger. When I was shooting this and put some hoppers through it before, what I ended up doing is putting all three fingers on the bottom and just doing with one finger, no problem. No problem ramping when I do it that way. It's the walking that bugs me. But the shot I really like, and that's not a surprise. It feels pretty much exactly like a Gamma Core, which is, again, no big surprise. It is exactly like a Gamma Core. So if you're a fan of a Gamma Core style shot, but maybe you like the you know, the appearance, and I've said in the review, Luxes have been the coolest looking paintball markers like since they came out. They're very cool looking. I kind of wish they'd do something new, like I said, but they look awesome. Maybe you just want this model to celebrate Tim's life I have no problem with that at all. It works great. The shot feel is great. And if all those things are true for you, nothing wrong with having one of these. But in the shooting video, I'm talking about what's it like to shoot. And for me, it just isn't great. Holding it is not a good experience for me. And the only way I can reliably shoot it is to one finger it. But when I do that, I have no problem keeping the gun ramping. I never miss a shot. When I walk it, oh look, I didn't miss any that time. But previously I missed several because of how high up I can get my finger. It doesn't work very well. But yeah, so overall, the barrel is reasonably quiet, has lots of porting in. I have no problem with Freak XL barrels. Perfectly good barrel. Like I said, the shot is great. There's not much kick to it at all. It has a nice smooth shot, but not a puffy shot. Again, like a Gamma Core, especially a Gamma Pro. So if you like that sort of, that type of shot where the feel as far as movement and kicking is soft, but the character of it is a little bit snappy, a bit. If you like those Gamma Core, Gamma Pro Core style shots, you're gonna like the shot in this because it's the same. Let's polish this off and see how it goes. I like to shoot that wheel over there because you can hear it on the video, I think. No problem murdering my fence post I always talk about down there. I think that's it, yep. And of course, once you're no longer shooting paint and you're out and you can tell because it doesn't shoot and no paint comes out, it also beeps to tell you you're out of paint. So yeah, we're really out of paint. But here it is, the Luxe TM40 from DLX. So yeah, shooting wise, it shoots great. I mentioned something about the ergos in there where I don't like that my finger ends up at the very top of the trigger, and it's not like you can see down when you pull it down here. Obviously, this isn't in case it wasn't clear in that video. It hinges very easily here, but the location of the hinge inside the frame is such that if you have your finger way on the top, you are actually pulling kind of straight back at the hinge point. Like I'm pushing on it right now. I notice the trigger's not moving, and that happens to be naturally where my top finger goes. So when I walk it, which is my preferred method of shooting, I often hit that top part where it doesn't move and I miss shots. If I were to own this, I would have to train myself to keep my hand a little bit lower so that my bottom trigger finger is rubbing the frame, and that way both my fingers will be low enough to shoot it. And this is not something I've heard other people talk about. That might be like I have a weird way of pulling a trigger that most people don't. And but I just thought I'd mention it in case you like to have your hands high on the marker. It is a thing for me. Maybe not for most people. The feel of the shot, great. I love the way a CS2 shoots, so it stands to reason with the core of this gun essentially is a Planet Eclipse Gamma Core. They just directly copied it. No effort to even really change it. And that, of course, results in a shot like a CS2. So if you like a CS2, you're going to like this as far as the shot, and I do. I like the feel of it. It has a crisp shot, but not puffy and soft, but not loud either. It's a good quality shot. I hate saying quality. It's such a habit. It has nothing to do with performance, but I do enjoy the feel of it just fine. No problems there. The barrel we mentioned in the shooting video it does have lots of porting on it. It's quiet. No problems with these barrels. Good performance. Overall performance seems to be excellent. Paint handling, the jury's out there because I haven't put enough paint through it, but that is kind of it in a nutshell. So my overall feeling on this thing is not much different than the X. A big part of what makes a marker fun to play with or good, quote unquote, to play with is the ergonomics. It doesn't really matter how well it performs if you can't hold on to the thing. And for me, the ergonomics are a disaster. In fact, it's a little bit warm in my little basement studio here right now, and my hand is getting sweaty, and I'm slipping around a little bit on this. I'm not kidding. I really am. No, I'm not going to drop it, but I can already feel it, right? This edge being sharp, this whole thing being hard, no rubber on it at all, the hard plastic on the very parts where I engage the grip, all of those things conspire to make the ergonomics of this thing terrible for me. That said, lots of people own and love the X and have now bought and love these. all I'm saying is if you haven't ever played with one and you're going to drop that money, try to borrow somebody's or shoot one at a field first so that you don't spend all that money and find out that you don't like holding it the same way that I don't like holding it. Because if it bothers you, you're not going to enjoy owning it. Lots of people have no problem with that. If you are one of those people, then that's not an issue for you. The performance is fine. I have no problems with the performance or the features. It seems solid. I mentioned I'm a big fan of the quality manufacturing that allows for that toolless latch system to get the frame off. I think that this is an area where DLX is beating everybody else. When you see that latch system work, for me anyway, it makes me suddenly think, why aren't the other high ends like that? Like, it's almost like a glaring omission now that I've messed with this. Like, the other way seems antiquated. But overall, so we get to that point I always say, right? Should you buy one? In my opinion, I have to say no. And the reason for that, I keep coming back to, is these ergonomics. It looks great, but it's terrible to hold, and I just can't get past that. Like I said before, if you try one and you don't have those problems, then it would be a yes, because I don't have any problem with the function or the shot character or how loud it is or any of those things, the screen, the features, the way the grips come off, all that stuff. I mentioned how much I love the frame removal. Mech frame conversion is going to be cool. All those things are good. But if you can't stand holding it like me, then that's the end of the conversation for me. And because there are other options, the CS2, it's CS2 Pro now, is the only one they sell new, is the clear winner for me when I'm talking about what high end do I want, because it provides all the same functionality. And what I mean by that is very nice high-end electro marker. It has the additional trigger adjustability, the vastly superior, in my opinion, ergos, and the ability to easily switch to a very high-quality, high-performance mechanical frame. When you put all those together, those two markers are clearly head-to-head. They're roughly the same money, and for me, the CS2 Pro is superior for these reasons. If the ergos don't bother you, you've already played with one, and you think that I'm being ridiculous, and the ergos are completely fine, then yeah, go for it. They look cool. Nobody didn't love Tim Montresor for sure. It's a great way to remember him. The only way you can see TM40 on this thing is if you can see in there. I'm trying to get in the light. Right there, it says TM40. I'm a little disappointed they didn't brand it in a more obvious way. I mean, Tim was such a great guy, so important to paintball. Hiding the TM40 inside the trigger frame or inside the trigger grip or trigger guard area, what I'm trying to say, is kind of a little, like, at least here where it would be in the open would have been better. I don't know. That's not a criticism. I just wish it was more. I would have loved if they lasered it all over the whole thing, come up with some cool design that said TM40 on here. I think that would have been awesome. But again, thanks to Bryce for making this possible. Not possible without him. I wasn't going to spend $1,500 for this to try it. So very nice job for him. The Luxe TM40. What do you think? I want to hear what you guys think about the ergos. Plenty of you have shot Luxe X's and previous Luxes or amp shockers, or maybe even TM40s. And let me know what you think. Am I the outlier and the ergos bother me and it doesn't bother anyone else? Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I forgot to mention one thing. Flip lever ASA works great. I had no problem with that. You can't really do it with gloves, but so what? You can easily get your thumb under it to flip it. That thing works great too. I meant to mention it. Solid ASA. But yeah, what do you think about all that? I'm always open to criticism. If you think I'm being ridiculous about the ergos, let me know. But for me, when I get sweaty, I can barely hold the thing. I don't like all that hard plastic. I think it's terrible. I don't like this whole hard foregrip they've done forever. Don't like the sharp edges. All of it bugs me. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, please like the video and subscribe if you like this kind of content, even if you disagree with me. It's just my opinion. I'm just here. There'll be other reviews where people can't get enough of this marker. You can watch those too and get all the information you can to help make your decision. That's my only point. I'm not trying to be right or be on a crusade for anyone. Just my opinion. What do you think? Thank you so much for stopping by, and see you next time.